Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Daily Check-in. I'm Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and today's topic, boom! Look there. Oh, got it. Writing good docs. I write technical documentation as part of the way that I make my living, and I hate to say it, some docs are better than others. So that's the topic that I want to talk about a little bit today. Before I get into that, a few housekeeping items. First of all, quick reminder, I do this every day during the week at 11:30 a.m. in the Eastern Time, and we do respect daylight savings time around here for some insane reason, so it's 11:30 EDT for this current time period. So, remember that. Second thing, my podcast version of this daily check-in is now available on Apple Podcasts. It only took almost 2 weeks for them to approve it, but it's approved. So, hooray. Yesterday's episode is not quite up yet because YouTube took a little while to make it available for me to download and turn into the audio, but that'll get posted later today as well as today's episode. So, thumbs up for that. I have to find a faster way of doing that turnover, maybe something automated. Oh, that'd be nice. And then the last thing is that the HashiCorp certifications for Vault and Terraform are officially out. The big announcement went out at noon yesterday. I knew about it, but I couldn't talk about it because my live stream is half an hour before the official announcement. But it is 100% live now. If you're interested in attaining your certification for either HashiCorp Terraform or HashiCorp Vault, those certifications, they're the associate level. They're now available. You can just go to their website and check it out. And if you're looking for a study guide, I happen to have one on LeanPub, and I'll include that in a link in the show notes. So you don't have to worry about finding that right now. Okay, that's everything that I wanted to cover in the realm of opening remarks. Now let's check in before we get into the main topic. How are you? How are things going in your neck of the woods? It's been interesting around here. I think we've hit a nice rhythm with getting the kids to do their schoolwork, me getting my work done, and also my wife getting her work done. It's been an interesting balance, and it took us a few weeks to really get it. And the key to that whole thing is just communicating who needs what when. So now we are literally on Sunday reviewing our week together. How are we going to do this? And then checking in throughout the week to make sure that our schedules are still in sync. So it's more work, it's more difficult, but we're getting it. And hopefully we only have, 3 or 4 more weeks of this. Anyhow, that's how I'm doing. I want to hear how you're doing. So, reach out, feel free through YouTube, through Twitter, whatever makes sense for you. If you want to DM me, my DMs are open. I'm always happy to talk about whatever you're struggling with at the moment. The topic I wanted to get in today is how to write good technical documentation for an audience that you don't know exactly who's going to be reading it. And if you want a really good example of well-written and clear technical documentation, this is going to sound insane, but go to the Microsoft Docs site, anything for Azure. They have done a tremendous job of updating their docs to make them readable and easy to follow along. So if you're trying to find like a template for how to approach this, that's actually a pretty good approach. And I will say that has not always been the case for Microsoft Docs. There was a time when their docs were pretty horrendous and difficult to follow. And now they've really made a leap to making them simpler and easier to follow. So if you're looking for an online example, that's a good direction to point you to. Now, what makes it good? How did they approach their docs, and how should other people approach their technical docs to make it easier for people to read? The first thing is setting up the expectations for a specific doc ahead of time. What are you going to show me over the course of this document? That all goes in that very first paragraph. You need to set expectations for your reader. What are they going to learn within the context of this document? You need to set that up first, because I might just be perusing through docs trying to find something specific. And sometimes the titles of the docs aren't super clear, or it's difficult to distill down what I'm looking for. I want to be able to read that first paragraph and go, this doc is going to help me, or this doc is not going to help me. I'm going to move on to the next doc. Once you've set those expectations, you have to deliver on those expectations. So whatever you put in that paragraph, that's your binding contract. You've now told the reader, this is what's going in that doc. And now you need to actually create that. And how are you going to create that? What's the best format for that? I like to say follow the tell, show, do. Tell the reader about some piece of information. So let's just make something up. You are making sourdough bread. It's the first time you're ever creating a sourdough starter. I might tell you upfront a little bit of information about the first step in creating a sourdough starter. You need to assemble these ingredients because they are going to go together. And then perhaps I will show you how to assemble those ingredients through visual or text. So you want to tell and then you want to show. And the show could be a video, it could be pictures, or it could just be like a step-by-step instructions. But you need to set up the context and then show the person what they're going to do. And then the last part is the doing. That's up to them. That your reader now needs to go do what you've shown them. And hopefully you've given them the tools within the doc to be able to go do the thing, especially if they're trying to follow along. This is more in the context of a guide, but really it works for most technical documentation. So tell, show, do. Pictures are super important, especially for technical style documentation. If you don't provide images, things can get confusing very quickly. You hear a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's especially true when it comes to technical architecture, where you're trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. Sometimes drawing a picture, even if it's not great, I mean, I just use PowerPoint for most of my diagrams, but just doing that little bit really makes the documentation clearer for the person who's trying to consume it. So use pictures, use them liberally. They don't have to be perfect and polished. You can hire a graphics firm to make them more polished and clearer and consistent across all your docs. You probably want to do that if you're like offering a paid product. But if you're just trying to do a blog post or some sort of technical doc for an open source thing, a rough drawing is better than nothing. So add pictures to your docs. It just helps. Another thing is to check your assumptions of what the reader knows at the door. You know the topic pretty well, at least hopefully, because you're writing a technical document about a topic. You have to come to it as if you're a reader who doesn't know very much about the topic. So if you're using acronyms, you need to spell out those acronyms, even if they're fairly common. I mean, you don't have to spell out what ASAP stands for, but if you bring up an acronym that is common within your topic, expand it out the first time, just so they know what you're talking about. It makes it easier for them to search and gain context. If you talk about a separate topic, or if you reference something, provide a link in the documentation so someone can dive in if they're unfamiliar with this other concept or topic that you're tying into your current doc. Always provide links to that sort of stuff. And if it's really key to the topic that you're expanding on, then provide an extra paragraph just describing what this other topic is that you're bringing in. Good example is, let's say, and I'm actually doing this right now, I'm writing some technical documentation on how to use a piece of software with service accounts on AWS's Elastic Kubernetes service. That sounds pretty esoteric, right? One of the things that's in there is service accounts, and you may not know how service accounts work within Kubernetes, but it's key that you understand how those work if you're going to understand how they work in the context of using this product with EKS. So within the documentation, I'm going to provide a link to the documentation that Kubernetes wrote about service accounts. So you can go, oh, okay, I'm not familiar with service accounts. I'm going to go read this doc real quick so I can gain some familiarity. I'm also just going to, in one paragraph, do a little blurb on what service accounts are and kind of how they work with the link to that expanded documentation. So at least someone has some context if they've never used them before. It's those little things that make documentation more readable, and it allows the reader to get more value out of that documentation quickly, as opposed to just kind of being confused because you referenced a term that they've never seen before and provided no link to what that term means or how it's being used. Once you have made that promise up top, delivered on the promise throughout, and then at the bottom, the last thing you want to do is provide a summary of what the reader has just learned. And that's important because if they're skipping around, they might read that summary and go, oh, I must have skipped the section that talked about this. Assume that your reader is going to skip around because they're probably going to. The other thing is you want to provide additional links to next steps or other concepts that are related to the topic that you're writing about, because you may have piqued their interest about something else over the course of your doc, and now they want a link to dive further down the rabbit hole of whatever that follow-up doc is. So that's roughly how I would approach writing technical documentation. There's actually some really good contributing guides out there as well that can help you down this path. But just remember the few key principles. Set expectations at the beginning of the doc. Deliver on those expectations by doing tell, show, do. Include pictures. Check your assumptions about what the reader knows, and provide links to other concepts that are related to the topic that you are addressing in that technical documentation. If you can do all of those things, you are going to write awesome technical docs, or you can contribute to help other open source projects have even better technical docs. So that's my topic for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts about writing technical documentation or other topics that you might want me to talk about. I'm always happy to take on a new topic and, ramble about it for 8 to 10 minutes. Lastly, on Friday of this week, I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything session. So you can either show up at the live stream and ask your questions there. You can submit them via Twitter. I'm Ned1313. Send me a DM, whatever you feel comfortable with. I am curious what small questions you might have about what I'm doing with the live stream, what I'm doing in general, really anything. That's the whole point of an AMA. So until tomorrow, thank you for watching. Stay healthy and stay safe.